this. Imagine that you're 21 years old and you are pregnant, you're 6 months pregnant, you've given your first baby up for adoption at 16, you had your second baby at 19, and now you're pregnant a third time at 21. And you're in the house, and your nephews are over, and they want to go back outside and play because Grandpa has told them it's time to go and burn the shingles in the fire. And they want to go out and play. And so that's what they want to do. And so you let them. And you were going to keep your daughter in because you were thinking, maybe I should change her diaper. But you decide to let her go outside too and play. And not even 5 minutes later, you hear screaming. And you look outside, and there is your daughter in flames. Okay? She's in flames from her head to her waist. And if you can imagine how traumatizing that would be for a 21-year-old to look outside and see your little 2-year-old. We all know how big 2-year-olds are, right? Pretty tiny, covered in flames. And my cousins were screaming because, they were devastated that this had happened to their little cousin. And they took the water, they poured it out, and got the flames out, and rushed me to the hospital. And I ended up being in the hospital for about 3 months solid. And they would put me to sleep every 2 days to do surgeries on me. And every day was a miracle for me, because every day we didn't know if I was going to live or die. Every single day. So what also happened is about a month and a half into it, what happened was my parents thought we were all good. We thought I was going to live. And then what happened was my mom came to the hospital one day, and they realized that there was a message in my chart, and it said code 111. And at the time, what that meant was if you heard at the hospital, if you heard the announcement saying code 111, station 52, if you were a doctor and nurse related to that, you rushed to that unit because it meant that someone was living or dying. Someone was dying, basically. And so they had that in my chart, and my mom said, "What does this mean?" And she says, "Oh, well, we put that there just in case." But what my mom didn't know was that it had actually happened to me. I was actually dead at one point. And they didn't want to tell my mom or my dad because they didn't want to have to tell my parents that I might have died, or that I had died and they had brought me back to life. And so they thought it would be better to just not tell my mom, right? So when I was about 18 years old, I went through a phase in my life where I had to know why I lived. Because back in 1968, if a 2-year-old is burned to 75% of her body, there's a very, 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 very slim chance that she's ever going to live, right? So I wanted to know, why did I live? Why? What was in it for me? Like, I've struggled big time. Like, I've dealt with all the staring. I've dealt with the bullying. I've dealt with the teasing. I've dealt with being different. All my life, I dealt with not feeling beautiful and not feeling good enough and never having boyfriends, and dealt with my self-esteem issues. Why? Why do I have to live through this? I'm only 18. Why couldn't I have died at 2? Why couldn't I have? And what happened is I went back to that day that I died. And I had basically an out-of-body experience where what happened is we went back to that day. I was hypnotized, and I could see myself looking down at my body. And if you can imagine being burnt, I'm covered in bandages. There's bandages everywhere, even my face, my head, my back of my head. The only thing keeping me alive is a breathing tube coming out of my throat and a couple of IVs. That's the only thing keeping me alive, okay? And so we went back to that day, and I was above my body looking down with my God. And my God was like a fuzzy gray matter, and we were standing, we're above looking down at all the doctors and nurses, and they're trying to revive me and bring me back to life, because the last thing they wanted to do was to tell my 21-year-old mom and my 24-year-old dad that I died. Right? So they were doing everything they could to bring me back to life. So I'm having a conversation, and I said, why do I need to live? And he said, you're too young to die. And I said, but why? And he says to me, you need to live. You need to live for your grandpa and your sister. And I said, okay. And I lived. And I came back to life. And it was incredible. And I want to say one thing. That 2-year-old didn't quit. That 2-year-old, I think we would all agree, had the right to die. Right? Wouldn't we agree with that? Seriously. Do you honestly believe a 2-year-old should live through that kind of trauma? Right? I don't. I mean, if I saw a 2-year-old that was burnt like that, I don't think I would ever expect her to live. But guess what? Because she did live, now look. Right? I'm a successful author. I'm a speaker. I share my message. I got married. We were together for 24 years. I ended up having 3 kids, including a set of twins. And you know what? Life is just too short. We have to go on no matter what, and we have to live for ourselves. We really do. I know that we're supposed to put our kids first, and yeah, we are, and our husbands, and and our spouses, but we also have to put us first, too. Okay? We have to live for us, right? Because if we're not happy, it's going to be very hard for us to make other people happy. And we have to be happy and put ourselves first and make sure we can do whatever it takes to have great self-esteem and feel beautiful. So, here's the fun part of the story. I want to tell you about my first time walking the runway. Okay? My very first time walking the runway was 2 years ago. And I wanted to meet Ben Berry. Does anybody know who Ben Berry is? Ben Berry is Canadian. He's responsible for convincing Dove to use real people, just like us, as models in their beauty campaign. Incredible guy. I wanted to meet him because I thought we can talk about some great stuff, right? He can talk about body diversity. I can speak about inner beauty and how it's all the beauty on the inside that counts. It's not the outer beauty. It's how we feel in our heart and soul, right? And we're all beautiful. We all have it. It's all in here. We just need to draw it out. And I wanted to meet him, and he wasn't answering my emails. So I said, you know what, universe, I want to meet Ben. Help me meet Ben. So what he did is I came on Facebook, a competition for the Every Woman Model Search competition, and Ben Berry was a sponsor. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is not how I wanted to meet Ben Berry. Because you know what? I had a horrible concept of what models were. I felt, I've got scars on my face. I will never be beautiful. I will never be able to walk down a runway because I am not beautiful enough. I'm not a model. And so when this modeling competition came up, I was like, oh my gosh, this is really pushing me to the limit, right? But you know what I thought? I have to do it. Not only to meet them, but because I needed to prove to myself that I was beautiful no matter what. And you know what? I got selected out of 1,500 women. I got one of 30 people selected to compete in this model search competition. See, they weren't looking for an everyday size 2 model. They wanted people like you and I, just average, ordinary women who just wanted to get out and maybe win a trip, because you could win a trip, but people who just, everyday women who knew that we don't compete with those size 0 girls, right? We're us, and there's nothing wrong with us. We're beautiful just the way we are. And so I was one of 1,500 people selected, and I told he's now my ex-husband, I told him, I said, well, guess what I did? And he said, what did you do? And I said, well, I entered this model search competition and I've been selected. And he's like, what? What did you do that for? And I said, you know what? I want to meet Ben Berry, and he's a sponsor, and if I win this thing, I could get to meet Ben Berry. But what I found out was that walking that runway was way more than just about meeting Ben Berry. It was all about me, facing my fear and realizing that I was beautiful and I